On the final night of the United States Figure Skating Championships, in a sold-out arena in downtown St. Louis, gravity stopped following the rules. A voice came down through the roof and called the ice a temple. It demanded that Earth surrender its priests. The aliens had studied us for 11 years. They had studied the wrong part. If you like stories where humanity wins in the strangest way possible, take 1 second right now and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs it today. And when we reach the final jump, I want you to tell me in the comments what you would have done in his place. Now lace up. Let's step onto the ice. It was Saturday, January 10th, 2026, and St. Louis was frozen solid. Sleet had been falling since Thursday. The Mississippi was running gray and slow under a sky the color of old dishwater. Every road downtown had a thin skin of ice on it, the kind that looks like nothing until your tires find it. The temperature had not climbed above 21 degrees in 2 days. Half the city had given up and stayed home. The other half was inside Enterprise Center, and they were very loud. 18,000 people had packed the building for the men's free skate. This was the last event of the championships, and it was not just a national title on the line. Tomorrow afternoon, in this same arena, the United States Olympic figure skating team would be announced. Milan and Cortina were 3 weeks away. Everything that mattered came down to 4.5 minutes on a sheet of ice that was 1.5 inches thick. Down in the tunnel, Wes Calloway was retying his left boot for the 4th time. He was 28 years old, which in figure skating is roughly the same as being 90. He had finished second at nationals 3 times, second in 2023, second in 2024, second again last year in Wichita, 3 silver medals sitting in a shoe box in his apartment in Colorado Springs, and not 1 gold. His left knee had a hole in the cartilage the size of a dime. His doctor had been very clear about it. Every hard landing took something out of it that did not grow back. "Stop touching the boot," said Marty Dolan. Marty was 61, built like a fire hydrant, and had coached Wes since the kid was 14. He had blown out his own hip in 1992 and walked like a man who kept losing arguments with a staircase. "It feels loose," Wes said. "It feels loose because you keep untying it." Marty handed him a water bottle. 6 minutes, skate your program. Don't skate the standings. Out on the ice, the resurfacing machine was finishing its last pass. Ray Hollies was driving it, the way he had driven it for 19 years, in a slow, lazy spiral that looked casual and was actually mathematically perfect. Ray was the arena's head ice technician. He did not care about medals. He cared about surface temperature, which he kept at 24 degrees exactly, and about the brine lines running under the concrete, which he treated the way some men treat a beloved dog. "Ray," someone called from the boards. "How's the sheet?" Ray did not look up. "The sheet is fine. The sheet is always fine." "It's people who are the problem." Near the tunnel entrance, Nora Whitfield was sitting on an equipment case with her skate guards on and a bag of ice taped to her ankle. She was 19. She had won the women's title 2 nights ago, and she had done it with a broken toe she had not told anybody about until after the medal ceremony. She was already on the Olympic team. She had stayed to watch the men because, in her words, watching Wes Calloway lose again was becoming her personality. Next to her, Kip Salter was eating a soft pretzel. Kip was 22 and had finished 9th. He had accepted this outcome roughly 11 minutes after it happened and had spent the rest of the evening working his way through the concourse. "You're going to be sick," Nora said. "I'm going to be full," Kip said. "There's a difference." That was the state of things at 8:19 in the evening, Central Time, cold rain outside. A packed house inside, 6 men left to skate, 1 aging silver medalist with a bad knee and 1 last shot. And 240 miles above all of it, something was watching and had been watching for a very long time. The vessel was called the Thrashing Light, and it had been parked in a high, quiet orbit for 11 Earth years. It belonged to the Sorin, and the Sorin did not conquer planets the way you might expect. They did not bomb capitals. They did not target power grids. They considered that crude, and more importantly, inefficient. The Sorin were a gravity people. Their entire civilization ran on the manipulation of local mass and weight. They shaped it, bent it, farmed with it, built with it, and used it to keep every species they had ever encountered politely in line. And they had a theory, refined over 4,000 years, that every civilized species eventually develops a compliance rite. A ceremony where the species publicly proves its obedience to the gravity of its own world. Find the rite, take the priests, the planet follows. High Overseer Threx had spent 11 years searching Earth's broadcasts for that rite. He had reviewed weddings, funerals, elections, marathons, church services, and one extremely confusing thing called a monster truck rally. And then in year 6 he had found it. Analyst Vec, Threx had said very quietly, the way a man speaks when he knows he is about to be right forever. Play it again. Vec had played it again. A human in ceremonial dress alone on a white plane. The human accelerates. The human launches upward. The human rotates 4 times in less than a second. The human returns to the plane on a single narrow blade and does not fall, and then a panel of seated elders assigns the human a number. They are being graded, Threx had whispered. They are being graded on how perfectly they return to the ground. Vec had checked the numbers. There was an entire body of law. There were penalties. There were levels. There were things called deductions. There was a global governing council. There were rites held every year in every nation. And there was 1 week in every calendar where the greatest of these humans gathered in a single building to be judged. The ice is their altar, Threx said. The blades are their instruments. The judges are their clergy. And the ones who jump, Vec asked. Those are the high priests, Threx said. Those are the ones who bargain with gravity on behalf of their entire species. He had waited 5 more years for the right night. He wanted the largest gathering. He wanted the final rite of the season. The one the humans clearly considered the most sacred. Because they scheduled it immediately before their athletes departed for an even larger ceremony overseas. Tonight was that night. At 8:22, the thrashing light began its descent through the storm. And down on the ice, in the middle of a warm-up, Kip Salter jumped a triple loop, hung in the air about a foot longer than physics allows, and landed so far past his own timing that he sat down hard on the ice and slid into the boards. The crowd laughed. Nora did not laugh. Nora had gone very still, because she had been watching the water bottle on the boards, and for 1 full second the water inside it had not been sitting flat. The second dip came 30 seconds later, and it was not subtle. Every person in Enterprise Center felt their own body get lighter. Not floating, not flying, just wrong. It was the feeling you get in an elevator that drops too fast, except it did not stop. Popcorn lifted out of a tub in section 112 and hung there like it was thinking about something. A dropped glove fell to the floor in slow motion, as if the air had turned to syrup. 18,000 people made the same noise at the same time. Out on the ice, 6 skaters in the warm-up group reacted 6 different ways, and here is the thing that nobody in that building understood yet. Not one of them fell. They stumbled. They spread their arms. They dropped into a crouch and let their edges run out wide. But they stayed up, because a figure skater's inner ear is not a normal human inner ear. These were people who spent 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, deliberately spinning their own heads at 350 rotations per minute, and then landing on a strip of steel 4 millimeters wide. Their bodies did not ask permission before correcting. Their bodies just corrected. Nora Whitfield stood up off the equipment case and yanked the ice pack off her ankle. "Marty," she said. Marty Dolan was already looking at the roof. The lights went out, not flickered. Went out all at once. All 18,000 seats plunged into gray emergency red. And then the whole building filled with a sound like a cathedral organ being pulled through a jet engine. The roof of Enterprise Center did not open. Something simply became visible above it, and through it, the way a coin becomes visible at the bottom of a pond when the ripples flatten. It was long and dark, and it hung there in the sleet, and it was so large that people in the upper deck later swore they could not see the edges of it. Then the voice came. It came out of the arena's own sound system, out of every speaker at once, in perfect, unaccented English, and it was calm in a way that was far more frightening than shouting. "Practitioners of the right, do not flee. You are not being punished. You are being relieved." Somewhere in section 104, a man yelled a word that will not be repeated in this story. "I am High Overseer Threx of the Sorin Accord," the voice continued. "For 11 of your years I have observed your ceremony. I have studied your law. I have counted your deductions. I understand what you do here. Wheeze Calloway had made it to the boards. He was gripping them with both hands, and his knee was screaming, and he could not stop staring upward. "You have spent your entire history negotiating with the gravity of this world," Threx said. "Tonight, that negotiation ends. Bring forth your gravity clergy. Bring forth your judges. Bring forth your highest-ranked priest. Surrender your instruments, and this world will be spared the difficulty of resistance." There was a very long silence in Enterprise Center. And then, from the judge's table at the near boards, a woman's voice came through a hot microphone that nobody had thought to shut off. "Absolutely not," said referee Carol Bentley. "We are in the middle of an event." Carol Bentley was 57 years old, had officiated national championships since 2009, and had once ejected a coach for arguing about a level 3 step sequence. She had the rule book open in front of her. She had a pen. She had, in her entire professional life, never once been late starting a warm-up group, and she was not about to break that record for an alien. Marty Dolan, standing 20 feet away, said quietly, "Oh, they picked the wrong building." Above them, the underside of the ship opened, and 3 shapes came down through the roof on a column of soft blue light. The Sauron were tall, 7 feet, maybe more, narrow through the shoulders, wrapped in dark-plated armor that seemed to drink the emergency lighting. They wore long hanging mantles that swept behind them. They looked to be perfectly fair, absolutely magnificent. They landed on the ice. All 3 of them went down immediately. The first one's legs went out sideways in 2 different directions. The second one grabbed the first one, which accomplished nothing except that now there were 2 of them sliding. The third one managed to stay upright for almost a full second, then rotated slowly and gracefully onto his back like a very expensive statue being loaded onto a truck. 18,000 terrified Americans laughed at the same time. Kip Salter, still holding half a pretzel, said, "Oh, they've never done ice." Up on the thrashing light, analyst Vex said carefully, "Overseer. The surface is providing significantly less friction than the survey indicated." "The survey indicated the priests walk on it constantly," Threx said. "The priests are wearing blades, Overseer. Why would you wear blades on a floor? I believe that is the entire ceremony, Overseer." Threx was quiet for a moment. Down on the altar, one of his elite Ascension guards was attempting to stand up, getting about halfway, and then going back down in a manner that his species had no word for. "Deploy the gradient," Threx said, and every person in that arena suddenly weighed 1.5 times what they had weighed a second earlier. The sound that filled Enterprise Center was not a scream. It was lower than that. It was 18,000 people being pressed into their seats at once and having the air pushed out of them. In the upper deck, people simply could not stand up. In the lower bowl, a man trying to reach the aisle went down on one knee and stayed there. Steel groaned somewhere overhead, as the rigging that held the sound system took on half again its designed load. A lighting truss over Section 119 sheared at one anchor point, swung down, and jammed itself across the mouth of the tunnel, sealing about 40 people into a concrete alcove behind it. And on the ice, 6 figure skaters were still standing. Wheeze Calloway felt it hit him like a hand on his shoulders. His knee folded. He got it back. He got it back because his body had spent 14 years learning exactly one lesson, which is that when the landing goes wrong, you do not stop, you redistribute. Nora Whitfield had already stepped over the boards. "Nora," Marty barked. "They can't move," she said, and she was pointing at the stands. "Marty, nobody in this building can move except us." She was right, and it took the rest of them about 4 seconds to understand why. Every human being in that arena was fighting an extra 50% of their own body weight. For a person who spends their day sitting in an office, that is catastrophic. For a person who spends their day launching their entire body upward, and then absorbing 4 to 5 times their body weight through one ankle on the landing, over and over. 300 times a week, it was Tuesday. Wheeze pushed off the boards and found that skating under 1.5 gravity was awful and possible. "Kip," he shouted, "boards, West Tunnel." "There are people stuck." Kip Salter dropped the pretzel. It hit the ice like a brick. What happened over the next 11 minutes did not appear in any official report, because there was no procedure for it. 6 men in sequined costumes and one 19-year-old woman with a broken toe began systematically pulling people out of the lower bowl of a hockey arena, while the weight of the world kept changing. Under them. They used the ice. That was the trick. Under heavy gravity, walking was nearly impossible, but gliding still worked, because a blade does not carry weight, it converts it. They dragged people onto equipment mats and towed them across the sheet like sleds. Kip and two others got a shoulder under the fallen truss and levered it up 4 inches, which was enough. Ray Hollies was not on the ice. Ray Hollies was underneath it. He had gone down into the mechanical room the moment the lights died, because that is where Ray goes when things are wrong. And he was standing in front of a wall of gauges that had all decided to lose their minds at the same time. The brine temperature was climbing, the compressors were surging, and the load cells embedded in the slab, the ones that measured how much weight was sitting on the concrete, were doing something Ray had never seen in 19 years. They were oscillating. Rising, falling, every 11 seconds. Ray grabbed the wall phone, got the arena operations desk, got nothing, and then did what Ray always did, which was solve his own problem. He pulled a notepad out of his shirt pocket and started timing it with the sweep hand on his wristwatch. 11 seconds, 11 seconds, 11 seconds. You're not holding it steady, Ray said out loud to a machine 240 miles away. You're re-grabbing. You have to keep re-grabbing. He looked at the pipes over his head, and at the enormous steel tank of refrigerant, and at the slab, and something behind his eyes clicked into place. Upstairs, Colonel Grant Whitaker of the Missouri National Guard was having the worst night of a 22-year career. He had a company staged 3 blocks out on Clark Avenue, and he could not get them past 14th Street, because whatever the ship was doing, it got heavier the closer you came. His lead vehicle had made it half a block before the suspension bottomed out, and the tires began to deform. 2 of his soldiers had gone down and could not get back up on their own. Whitaker got on the radio to the arena's operations line, and unbelievably, someone picked up. This is Colonel Grant Whitaker, Missouri National Guard. Who am I speaking to? Carol Bentley. I'm the referee. The what? The referee, Colonel. I run this event. Whitaker closed his eyes. Ma'am, I need you to get everyone out of that building. Colonel, I have 600 pounds of aluminum truss across my west tunnel, and I have an unfinished free skate. I'm not going anywhere until somebody either evacuates my ice or finishes it. On the thrashing light. Analyst Vec was staring at his readouts with the expression of a man watching a bridge collapse in slow motion. Overseer, the gradient will not lock, Threx turned. Explain. It requires a stable friction reference and a stable mass reference to anchor to. The surface has neither. The instant a blade touches it, the pressure creates a liquid film. The film moves. The mass distribution moves. The system re-anchors every 11 seconds because it cannot hold. Then increase the power. Overseer, that is not a power problem, it is a foundation problem. We have built the gradient on a floor that is politely refusing to be a floor. Threx looked down at the arena. Somewhere below him, in ceremonial costume, a human had just towed an unconscious usher across the altar on a rubber mat while under 1.5 gravity. And had then gone back for another one. Bring me the standings, Threx said. Vec pulled them. The right had a hierarchy plainly listed. Highest combined score, highest ranked priest. Overseer, Vec said slowly. The current leader of this right is the one who won 2 nights ago. Whitfield Nora. 19 years of age. Then we take her, Threx said, and this world ends its resistance tonight. The blue light came down for Nora Whitfield at 8:51. And it found her halfway across the ice with a man's arm over her shoulders. She did not run. Running was not a thing that happened. The column simply narrowed until it was around her, and her feet came off the ice, and her skate guards fell out of her jacket pocket and clattered on the sheet below her. Hey, we said. He said it too quietly to matter, so he said it again, and this time he put everything he had into it, and 18,000 people heard him. Hey! The column stopped rising. You can't take her, we shouted at the ceiling. The right isn't finished. Silence. Then Threx's voice, curious, careful, and for the first time in 11 years, uncertain. Explain. Marty Dolan was at Weiss' elbow, gripping the boards. Kid, what are you doing? Shut up, Marty, I'm negotiating. Weiss turned his face up toward the roof. His knee was on fire. His hands were shaking. He was a 28-year-old 3-time silver medalist with a hole in his cartilage, standing on a sheet of ice in a sold-out arena. arguing with an alien warlord about the rulebook. You said you studied our law, we said. So you know the event isn't over. 6 men still have to skate. Nobody's final score is final until the last skater is done. If you take her now, you're taking a leader who hasn't been confirmed. You'd be taking the wrong priest. Up on the thrashing light, Analyst Vex's head turned very slowly. Overseer, he said. He is correct. Under their law, the ranking is provisional until the final competitor completes the rite. Threx said nothing for 4 full seconds. And this was the thing that Wheeze Calloway had gambled on, without knowing he was gambling on it. Because a species that spends 4,000 years cataloging other people's ceremonies is a species that cannot bring itself to interrupt one. Then finish it, Threx said, the blue column released. Nora dropped about 3 feet and landed on her feet because of course she did. Who is the final competitor? Threx asked. Carol Bentley was already at her table. She did not look up from her sheet. Final skater in the last group, Calloway Wesley. Bib 22. Then Wesley Calloway will perform the rite, Threx said, and I will judge it myself. If he satisfies the ceremony, I will accept that this world's negotiation with gravity is legitimate, and the accord will withdraw. If he fails, I will take the clergy, and this planet will learn compliance the ordinary way. Marty grabbed Wheeze by the front of his costume. Are you out of your mind? Probably. You have 1 jump left in that knee, Wheeze, 1, and that's on a good sheet at 1 gravity. I know. He's going to move the field on you. You understand that? He's going to change the weight in the middle of your program. I know, Marty. And then a hatch banged open at the northwest corner of the rink. And Ray Hollies came out of the mechanical room with a notepad in his fist and grease up to his elbows. 11 seconds, Ray said. Everybody looked at him. The thing they're doing. Ray held up the notepad. It's not steady. It's regrabbing every 11 seconds. It has to keep finding the floor again, over and over, because my floor won't hold still for it. He jabbed a finger at the ice. And I can make my floor a whole lot less cooperative. Marty stared at him. How? I flood it, Ray said. I put down a 1/4 inch of water and I drop the brine to 8 below at the same time. That sheet is going to be moving, freezing, and shifting mass across the entire slab for about 4 minutes. Anything trying to lock onto it is going to be chasing a wave. Nora Whitfield, standing there with her toe broken and her hands still shaking, started laughing. You're going to make him skate on soft ice, she said. I'm going to make him skate on the worst ice of his life, Ray said. It's that or nothing. Wheeze looked at the sheet. Wet ice is slow. Wet ice grabs a blade and holds it. Every jump would land like a car hitting a curb, on a dime-sized hole in his cartilage. Do it, he said. Ray went back through the hatch. Marty put both hands on Wheeze's shoulders and got right in his face, the way he had 1,000 times in 1,000 freezing rinks at 5 in the morning. Forget the choreography, Marty said. You hear me? Forget every count you've ever learned. There's only 1 number tonight. 11. Every 11 seconds that thing is blind for about half a beat. You jump into the blind. You land in the blind, and when the weight changes on you in the air, you don't fight it. You open early and you take whatever you can get. Wheeze nodded. And Wheeze, Marty's voice cracked. You fall, you get up. That's it. That's the whole plan. The lights over the ice came back up, 1 bank at a time, because Ray had found the breaker on his way past. Carol Bentley leaned into her microphone. Her hand was completely steady. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, representing the Skating Club of Colorado Springs, Wesley Calloway. We stepped onto the sheet. And 240 miles up, High Overseer Threx said, set the gradient to 1.6. The music was Rachmaninoff, and it started. And for the first 8 seconds, nothing about it made any sense. At 1.6 gravity, Wheeze Calloway could barely lift his own arms into the opening position. His first crossovers felt like pushing a refrigerator uphill. The ice was already going soft under Ray's flood, and his blades were leaving trenches instead of lines. And somewhere in the back of his skull, a very calm voice was pointing out that he had never once in his life skated a program like this. Then he heard Marty's voice in his head. 11. He started counting. The first jump was supposed to be a quadruple toe loop. Under 1.6 gravity with wet ice, that jump was suicide. Wheeze went into the entry, felt the weight, and made the call in about a 1/4 of a second. He did a triple instead. It was ugly. It was under-rotated by a 1/4 turn. He landed on a bent knee with his free leg scraping the ice, and he had to put a hand down to save it, and 18,000 people groaned. At the judge's table, Carol Bentley wrote a number. Then she leaned into the microphone. "Deduction," she said. "External assist. The competitor is being subjected to an artificial variation in local gravity by a non-participating party. Under Rule 302, that is an illegal aid to the field of play, and it is charged against the party providing it, not the skater." There was a pause, then Threx's voice genuinely thrown. "You are penalizing me. I'm penalizing the interference. Overseer, I am not competing. You entered my field of play and you altered the conditions of an event in progress," Carol Bentley said. "Where I come from, that makes you a participant and a poorly behaved one, -4. Up on the bridge, analyst Vec made a sound he later refused to explain. "Overseer," he said, "the clergy has issued you a deduction. I am aware. They have entered you into their own ceremony, Overseer. I am aware, Vec." Down on the ice, Wheeze had gotten his rhythm. He was counting under his breath, and every 11 seconds the weight went soft for about half a beat, and he had started building his elements into that half beat. He hit a triple axle in the gap and got all 3.5 rotations because for that fraction of a second, he was almost at normal weight. He came out of it clean, and the arena came apart. Then Threx changed the field mid-program. The gradient dropped to 0.6 without warning, and Wheeze, who was 2 strokes into a combination, went up off his toe pick and simply did not come down. He rotated 4 times, then 5. Then he realized he was still going, and he threw his arms out to kill the spin the way you do when a jump goes long. And he came down out of a quintuple rotation that no human being has ever landed. And he did not land it. He hit the ice on his hip and slid 20 feet into the boards. The building went silent. Threx's voice came down, and there was something like satisfaction in it. "The right has failed," and then Wheeze Calloway got up, that was all. He put a hand on the boards, and he got his skates under him, and he pushed off, and he picked the music up on the next phrase like he had planned the whole thing. "Overseer," Vec said. "He is continuing. He fell. Yes, Overseer. The right is a measurement of compliance. He failed to return correctly to the ground." "That is a failure. He appears not to consider it one, Overseer." Threx dropped the gradient again, then spiked it to 1.9, and Wheeze fell a second time on a spread eagle and got up again. And the third time he went down on a step sequence and got up before he had finished sliding. And down in section 112, a woman in a red coat, pinned under nearly twice her own body weight, put both hands on the seat in front of her and forced herself to stand. Then the man next to her stood. Then a whole row stood. It moved through Enterprise Center like water going uphill. 18,000 people, most of whom would never in their lives strap on a pair of skates, hauling themselves up onto their feet against a force designed to keep entire civilizations kneeling. Because a 28-year-old with a ruined knee kept refusing to stay down. "Overseer," Vec said, and his voice had changed. "The population is standing. Increase the gradient. Overseer, we cannot. The anchor is failing." Underneath the ice, Ray Hollies had his hand on the master valve and a grin on his face like a man about to do something unforgivable to a piece of equipment. He dumped the brine to 8 below zero across the entire slab at once. 14,000 gallons of water in the pipes changed temperature, changed density, and changed weight, all at the same moment, in a wave that rolled from one end of the rink to the other. 240 miles up, the thrashing light lost its lock. The gradient collapsed. The ship's own stabilizers, which had been fighting a load they thought was anchored, suddenly had nothing to push against. The vessel dropped 400 feet in half a second, and every Sauron aboard learned something new about their own inner ears. And on the ice, at exactly the right moment, with the weight back to normal and his knee already gone, Wheeze Calloway launched into the final jump of his program. He did not land it clean. Let's be honest about that. He was a quarter turn short and his landing edge scraped and he had to fight it all the way out to the corner. But he stayed up. The music ended. Wheeze Calloway stopped in the center of a wrecked, flooded, half-frozen sheet of ice, in a building full of standing people, and put both arms over his head. The thrashing light did not leave right away. For about 90 seconds it just hung there over downtown St. Louis in the sleet, and nobody inside Enterprise Center made a sound. and Colonel Grant Whitaker 3 blocks away had his hand on a radio. He did not know what to say into. Then Threx spoke, and he sounded like a man who had misplaced something enormous. "Explain the falling." Carol Bentley was still at her table. She had at some point in the last 4 minutes filled out an entire scoring sheet. "Explain what exactly?" He failed 3 times. "In our understanding, a failed compliance disqualifies the practitioner." He continued, "Your entire population then rose. Explain the falling." Carol Bentley looked at the ice for a moment. "Overseer," she said, "you spent 11 years watching our best knights. Every one of those skaters falls between 200 and 400 times a year. That's what the practice is. That's the entire job. What you watched tonight wasn't a ceremony about obeying gravity. It was a ceremony about what people do after gravity wins." There was a very long pause. "You do not measure the landing," Threx said slowly. "You measure the getting up." "Well," said Carol Bentley, "we measure both. But only one of them is worth anything." The thrashing light left at 9:26 in the evening. It went straight up through the storm without a sound, and by 9:31 it was gone from every tracking station on the continent. The next 4 hours were paperwork, medics, and a truly incredible amount of yelling. Nora Whitfield had a hairline fracture in her left wrist and a broken toe that she finally admitted to. Ray Hollies had a second-degree burn on his forearm from a brine line and refused treatment twice before Marty Dolan physically walked him to a paramedic. 19 people in the lower bowl were treated for compression injuries. Kip Salter somehow was completely fine and had located another pretzel. Wes Calloway did not walk out of that building. He was carried out on a stretcher, and the arena stood up again for that too, and he was so embarrassed about it that he put his hands over his face. His knee was done. Everyone knew it before the imaging confirmed it 2 days later. Colonel Whitaker finally got inside at 10 past 10 and found Carol Bentley at her table doing math. "Ma'am," he said, "I need a statement about what happened here." "In a minute, Colonel." "I have to post a score." "You have to what?" "There were 6 men in that final group, and they all completed their programs. This event is not over until I say it's over, and I am not going to be the referee who let an alien invalidate a national championship." She posted it at 10:17. Wesley Calloway, 2nd place. Again, 4th time. He was in an ambulance when he heard it, and he started laughing so hard the paramedic thought something was wrong with him. The Olympic team was announced the next afternoon in that same arena, on a sheet of ice that Ray Hollies had personally rebuilt overnight without sleeping, because the ice was fine. The ice was always fine. It was people who were the problem. Wes Calloway was named to the team. He did not compete in Milan. His knee would not allow it, and he knew it before the plane took off. He went anyway, and he stood in the tunnel in a Team USA jacket. And when Nora Whitfield came off the ice after her free skate, he was the first person she saw. Somewhere far out past the orbit of Neptune, High Overseer Threx filed a report with the Sorin Accord that took 9 hours to transmit and effectively ended his career. The Accord's revised advisory on the 3rd planet was distributed to every survey vessel in the fleet the following cycle. It is 4 lines long. Do not deploy gradient fields on this species. They train for it recreationally. Do not interrupt a ceremony in progress. They will make you a participant and they will score you. Do not measure this species by whether they remain standing. That is not the metric they use. If they fall and get up, withdraw. If they fall and get up a 3rd time, withdraw immediately and do not file a request for reinforcement, because there is nothing on the other end of this that you are going to enjoy. Back in St. Louis, Enterprise Center reopened 11 days later for a hockey game. There is a small brass plate bolted to the boards at the northwest corner now, near the hatch that goes down to the mechanical room. Nobody put in a request for it. It appeared one night and the building staff decided collectively not to notice. It says one thing: ice is fine, it's people who are the problem. If this story got you, do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me the moment that hit you hardest, because I read every single one. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories about humans winning in ways nobody saw coming, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Wes Calloway never did win a national title. He got up 4 times on the worst ice of his life in front of 18,000 people, and an empire 240 miles overhead decided that was more than enough.